on your screen. Instead, now you should have the slide deck big on your screen. And we're going to also try to introduce just a little bit of technology today. So I hope that you'll all be willing to play along and bear with me. So before we get too far along, I'm going to use a tool called Menti. Menti is a way for us to gather some information, a little survey tool that we can use in real time. What I'm going to suggest you do is use your telephone, your cell phone, or an iPad or some secondary device and scan the QR code, or you can use your computer or device and go to menti.com. And it's going to ask you for a code. And the code is here on the screen. I'm also going to pop the code into the chat. So we go to, let's see, go to menti.com if you haven't already. And we're going to do code 8236 4820. And I am going to stop this share and go on to a different screen while you do that. Make sure that everybody, though, sorry, make sure that everybody has a chance to capture the QR code. So let me bring that up just for a second. Make sure everybody has a chance to get there with us. And what you're going to see when you get there is a little survey tool that we are going to use just to get a sense of sort of where everybody is in the room, and where we are with our comfort level related to strategic plans. So there are 3 or 4 questions we're going to cycle through, and you're going to see some of the answers populate in real time. So for those of you that have joined us on the Menti, or even if you haven't, you'll still see some of the responses from your colleagues. What is your current comfort level with strategic plans? What is your current comfort level with strategic plans? We've got a big chunk of the group that says, I know what a strategic plan is, but don't necessarily know how to create one. A couple people say my organization has one, we just don't use it much. Not uncommon that we see that. And for those of you that have one and use it frequently to guide your decision making, congratulations. You are in the minority, not just on this call, but in all of nonprofits overall that actually have a strategic plan, know how to use it, and do use it. Much more common do we see responses in these sort of middle 2 columns. I know what a plan is, but I'm not sure how to create one, and or my organization has one, we just don't use it much. So you can see some of the answers populating here. This just gives us a sense of who's in the room. Let's go to the next question on our Menti poll, and this should advance on your phone as well, or computer, or whatever device you're using. I've listed here sort of 5 or 6 purposes of a strategic plan, but I'm wondering how you see a strategic plan, your opinion of the primary purpose. And what you're going to need to do here, if you're on a phone or another device, is literally grab one of these items and drag it up. And it's going to allow you to take these 6 items and rank them in order of what you think is the primary purpose, or the primary purposes, plural, of a strategic plan. It will allow you to rank these in order. And just like on the last slide, we'll sort of see the results here together in real time. I'll give you all just a minute. I see a couple of people have already completed this. A couple others are working on it. Thank you. Good. We'll take maybe just another 30 seconds here. Again, this is just helping me understand where the group is currently. Excellent. We'll come back and likely see this image again as we go through the day and go through the next hour anyway, if not the entire day. And then one other just quick question. Again, and we'll do this and use this technology as opposed to bombarding the chat and all of those things. What is the one thing you hope to get out of today's webinar? If there was only one thing you wanted to make sure you leave with, and I'll do my best to recalibrate the next 49 minutes based on your responses, and see where we land. Excellent. Good responses coming in. The other benefit of using this format is I'll be able to circle back with the SCORE folks here and look at some of your questions and desires from this session. And maybe if we don't get to these in the next 45 minutes, we'll get to them in a future session. A lot of great things here. This will be an ambitious 45 minutes, but the good news is you all are on the right plane. We're all going to be flying the right direction here. So again, let me attempt to switch back now to the PowerPoint slides if I can. Thank you for playing along with our Mentipoll. We're going to come back into slideshow mode, and I am going to once again share my screen. This is a really helpful foundation, and I'm going to be referencing some of those slides and some of your thoughts as we go here. Before I get too far along, let me tell you just a little bit about our consulting firm. I am part of the 1000 Feathers consulting firm. We are based in Columbia, South Carolina, but work all across the southern U.S., which may or may not be a geographical term that we made up, but our footprint covers 11 states across the South and Southeast, as far west as Oklahoma and Texas, and all the way to the coast, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. We have taken some of our own medicine recently. This will come up very quickly in a strategic planning presentation, but a large part of the purpose of strategic plans, and you all said this in your poll, was to clarify our mission and our vision. And we wanted to make sure that as a consulting firm that does this sort of work, we also had a tight, clear mission and vision. So let me start from left to right. First, our vision statement, our picture of the world of future success, is that all communities and the people who live in them have the strength, resiliency, and ability to reach their full potential. That all communities and the people who live in them have the strength, resiliency, and ability to reach their full potential. That is our articulated picture of future success. And that's a little foreshadowing when we talk about vision statements. Separate from, but related to organizational mission statements, our reason for existing. It's the uniqueness that we provide. It's how we work to achieve our vision. Our mission statement is boldly and exclusively focusing on the transformation of organizations, coalitions, and systems across the southern United States. So again, you see those words. They appear here again in gray in the sort of left-hand side of your screen. Those are our target markets: organizations, communities, systems. That's where we do our work. And what is our work? Our work is mostly in one of two buckets. Starting at the top, solve challenges and seize opportunities. A lot of times organizations or communities or systems are calling us saying, we have this challenge that we need to solve, or we have this opportunity ahead and we need to figure out how to position ourselves to seize that opportunity. And or organizations and communities are calling us to help them figure out and learn how to think and act more strategically. And you'll notice a very intentional word choice here that ties back to something I said in the intro. Part of thinking and acting more strategically is the creation of a strategic plan. But we like to emphasize that creating a strategic plan, if not used correctly, right? For those of you that maybe have one but don't use it, right? If not used correctly, it's just a thing. It's just a document. It's just a piece of paper. What we really want to do is help organizations figure out how to think and act more strategically, recognizing that a part of that process of thinking and acting more strategically may, in fact, be the creation of a strategic plan. We've been able to do this type of work with a lot of organizations, again, as you can see, across the South and Southeast, with a particular concentration in North and South Carolina. Again, with a firm that's based in Columbia, that's perhaps not a surprise. But you see a spread of clients here, and I only put this slide up to say we are very excited to be adding some additional logos to this slide soon, probably in the very near future, as we have just kicked off a very significant community level project with the United Way of the Lowcountry, the Community Foundation of the Lowcountry, and Beaufort County government. Those three organizations collaborating together, along with the 1000 Feathers consulting firm, working on a big project around self-sufficiency in Beaufort and Jasper counties. And so quick shout out to those three organizations, specifically to Dale and the team at the United Way of the Lowcountry, also for making this connection and introducing us to SCORE and the work that's happening here. So that's enough about us. Let's get on to the strategic plan conversation. And I think a logical place to start here, right, is what is a strategic plan? So I did what any good consultant, any good expert would do when I was thinking of the answer to this question, and I consulted Google. So let's look at a few Google results, but all joking aside, I have selected these very intentionally to come from what I would consider to be very reputable sources in the nonprofit business, right? In the nonprofit administration business, in the nonprofit governance business, who are answering this question, what is a strategic plan? If we were in a different format where we were interacting back and forth, I'd be asking you, what is the sequence and pattern you see in these answers? So I want you to think about that. But since we don't have a real good call and response function here on a webinar, I'm going to also give you some hints along the way of what I see as the sequence of these answers. So we're going to look at 4 different definitions. The first comes from BoardSource, probably the primary and one of most well-recognized and well-respected sources when it comes to board governance for nonprofit organizations. They say that a strategic plan framework, see the words in red bold, serves as a roadmap and as a tool for assessing progress. That gets us off to a good start, a roadmap and a tool. But even more than a roadmap and a tool, the National Council of Nonprofits tells us strategic planning is a process. I like that word a lot better because it implies that this is not a one and done sort of thing. It is a process that we go through that is going to help identify strategies that will best enable a nonprofit to advance its mission. When we did the poll earlier, some of you said to clarify or set our direction. You might say that's partly identifying strategies, advancing a mission. But again, I really like the word process here, more so than I like it referred to a strategic plan as a static roadmap or a static tool. Now we're into a process. Another definition, this from the Bridgespan Group, another nonprofit consulting firm that does a lot of work with massive nonprofits across the country. They also use the word process here in their definition. They also have introduced a new thought. It's a process that nonprofits use to make critical trade-offs. I really like this definition, and it starts to spur some thinking. We often say to organizations, strategic plans aren't just about what we're going to start doing or what the next thing is. They often also help us understand what we need to stop doing or where we might need to evolve our programming, evolve our approach. So using strategic planning as a process, there's that word again, to make critical trade-offs. And then finally, a more local definition, this one from Together SC. Together SC, for those of you that don't know, is the nonprofit membership alliance for nonprofits in South Carolina. Shameless plug, if you're not a member of Together SC, you absolutely should join and become a member as a way to leverage resources and information and collaborative tools. Again, process, and in this case, a continuous process that steers the organization in a mission-focused direction and provides a framework, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a continuous process. So now we've moved, as you can see, from a static tool to a process to a continuous process. And that process is intended to steer the organization in a mission-focused direction. So again, go back to our earlier poll. You all rank things like setting direction, clarifying mission and vision as being the top priority of a strategic plan. This definition that comes from Together SC would support those thoughts and those ideas that you suggested were important in the poll we did earlier. Now, let's talk a little bit about steers the organization. I think this is important. And it brings us to this next slide. You see, two images on this slide, side by side. And again, if we were in a different sort of call response ability here, had a little different mechanism to do call and response, I'd say to you, what are these images? That's the easy part. The one on your left, of course, is a compass. The one on your right, we have come to know as a GPS or a road map. What is the difference between a compass and a map? Why am I showing you these two images? Well, first of all, let's go back here. Steers the organization in a mission-focused direction. Now, if we come back, the compass, which is the one on the left, helps steer us in a direction. A compass will always provide us what is true north, right? That is very, very different than a GPS, which is the device on the right. In this case, happened to be a cell phone or one we would hold in our hand. And the device on the right gives us turn-by-turn directions, doesn't it? It tells us go 200 feet, turn right, go 1.6 miles, turn left. It might even talk to us in our ear and tell us exactly what to do. If you take nothing else away from this webinar today, recognize that a true strategic planning process should resemble more the image on the left than it does the image on the right. Let me say that again. If you take nothing else away from today, a strategic plan should resemble more the image on the left, something that steers us, provides direction, provides guidance, but a strategic plan is not the image on the right. The image on the right gives us turn-by-turn directions and tells us exactly what to do. That might be your organization's action plan or your work plan or your departmental plan or your grant application. Those function more like a GPS. Your strategic plan, in order to be successful and useful, needs to function much more like a compass. So again, hold that image in your mind as we go through the rest of the day. This is a very noisy, busy image of how we, 1000 Feathers, approach strategic planning. This is our strategic planning framework. There's a lot going on here. You can read this like you would read a book, left to right and from top to bottom. What I'm going to do, though, is break this image down into bite-sized chunks and pieces. I'm going to use some animation and whatnot to do that so that it will help your eyes so you're not taking this all in at the same time. And because we want to talk about all of these different sections. And again, you could have 100 different consultants come do this webinar for you, and you would get 99 different strategic planning frameworks. So I want to be clear that this is ours. This is the one that 1000 Feathers uses. Somebody else might have a little different framework or a little different approach. I'm not saying ours is better or ours is the only right answer, but it is the only one that I'm fully qualified to present on and talk about, is how we approach strategic planning. Again, being mindful of the compass. You're going to see that image over and over and over. This is how we approach this and how we encourage organizations to approach their strategic planning. So like I said, I'm going to start with really bite-sized chunks here that help us take this visual one piece at a time, right? The only way to eat an elephant, one bite at a time. So first, we're starting with the question, why? Why are we here? Said another way, When we start the strategic planning process, we are starting by clarifying the core of our being. Who are we? And when you hear words like why are we here and clarifying the core in the nonprofit space, oftentimes we're referring to our organization's mission statement and vision statement. And that's exactly where we start. Go down a little bit in this image. You'll see as we put the image back together, we've also given some hints here as to who should be involved in this process. That was at least one of the questions that was on the scroll earlier on the Menti. Who creates this plan? Who works on it? Some combination of board, leadership, and staff. And in our opinion, this first step, clarifying the core, is fundamentally the responsibility of the board and of organizational leadership. You see there's a dotted line there with staff. It sort of depends on the size and sophistication of your organization. Sometimes staff can be involved in the setting of a mission and vision. Many times we want to gather their input at least, but this is a primary function of a board of directors and of leaders of the organization, is to make sure that we have and are staying true to our mission and vision. You also then see a little clock at the bottom of the screen. This is to sort of encourage the question, how long should we keep our mission and vision? Mission and vision specifically should be as close to evergreen as we can get, right? I really steer organizations away from coming up with a new mission statement or a new vision statement every year, or even every 3 years or every 5 years. Now, in a strategic planning process, occasionally we'll come in and kick the tires, as it were, on a mission and vision, make sure it's still right, it's still accurate. We might have to update a word or two here or there. We might have to do some tightening, but we pretty rarely see massive whole-scale changes to organizations' mission and vision statement, except over long periods of time, making sure that we're continuing to be responsive to community needs, but your mission and vision should stay pretty consistent over the course of time. So again, related to a vision statement, related to a mission statement, at its core, and I should emphasize, we take days, weeks, months with organizations going through strategic planning processes, asking questions, facilitating exercises, and we're trying to do this in 45 minutes today. So I'm not going to be able to do all the exercises. I'm just giving you a sense of the types of things in your organization you could and should be talking about and be asking. In this context of why are we here, we often refer to the work of Simon Sinek. If you aren't familiar with Sinek's work, he has a wonderful TED Talk and a book called Start With Why. That is one of the pieces of sort of research and reading and writing that we use to inform our strategic planning process. Specifically, in this case, the idea of starting with why. Sinek calls this image his golden circle. I grew up referring to this image as a bullseye. You can call it concentric circles. You can call it whatever you would like. But the purpose of this image and the purpose of the arrow in the image is to remind us to start with why. Right now, you might be thinking, well, what does that mean? What's the difference? The traditional communication starts at the outside of this circle and starts with what, right? Many of you on this call, whether you're a nonprofit executive or a board member or a staff member, my guess is that everybody on this call at some level is able to articulate and tell us what your organization does. Fewer of you, and this is why we're moving to the center of the circle, are able to clearly articulate how your organization does its work. And an even smaller subset are able to clearly articulate why you exist. This is, again, borrowing from the work of Sinek, where we start strategic planning processes with staff, with leadership, with the board, saying, tell me not just what you do, but tell me why you are here. Again, we can't do a full exercise here, and I can't even see if you're going to do your homework or not, but I want to give you just like 30 seconds on a scrap piece of paper, grab a sticky note, grab whatever you have by your desk, and just take 30 seconds and think about that question. The organization that you're here representing today, why does that organization exist? Why do you get up in the morning and decide to be a part of it? Why is the organization here? And make sure as you're writing down your answer that you didn't just write down what your organization does, but rather why you are here. How did that go? Again, just a very quick exercise. This can be an extended exercise, and it's actually a really fun and interesting exercise in a room full of people, a boardroom, or a staff meeting, to push people to think not just what we do, but how we do our work, and more importantly, why we are here. We start our strategic planning processes with these. Why are we here? And specifically, again, in the nonprofit sector, the answer to why we are here might be found and should be found in your vision statement and or your mission statement. Here are our working definitions of a vision statement. I mentioned these earlier. If you were really paying attention in the intro, you heard me reference this. A vision statement is a clearly articulated picture of future success. It is the future you want to create. A mission statement, your reason for existing, a way to underscore the uniqueness of the organization as it relates to achieving the vision. Uniqueness ends up in mission statement. Let me say one thing, especially about community work and sort of how we approach this vision mission conversation. Because a vision statement is a clearly articulated picture of future success, it is possible, it is even quite likely that multiple organizations in your community share the same vision statement. I'm here to tell you that is okay. And in fact, it is preferred. Imagine the conversation where we're trying to find partners and colleagues and collaborators, and we say, hey, we share the same vision. We have the same picture of future success. It is, like I said, very possible and hopefully probable that multiple organizations in your community share some iteration of the same vision statement. Period. Next paragraph. It is hopefully unlikely that you have multiple organizations in your community that have the exact same mission statement. And this is a really, really important distinction, because our mission statement should underscore the uniqueness of your organization. Why do you exist? And if there are multiple organizations in the community that have the exact same mission, we probably need to start thinking about duplication and resource allocation, and why are we all here doing the exact same thing, right? So let that sink in as we're talking. Okay, and appropriate for multiple organizations to have a very similar vision statement. But if we
Forrest,
see, yes.
sorry, Forrest, I have a question. So would this apply to for-profit organizations as well, these definitions, and even could a nonprofit and for-profit still have the same vision statement? Do you
Yeah,
think?
it's a good question. It's a fair question. I don't want to get outside of my lane too much. I mean,
I
95% of our work is in the nonprofit sector. However, we're quite literally about to look at a few example vision and mission statements from the for-profit sector, because I wanted to highlight a couple sort of really prominent examples that you might be familiar with. And my sense is this could and maybe even should also be true in the for-profit sector. But again, that's not really my area of expertise. But what is clear here, though, is it is, again, think of it from a conversational tone. Whether we're a for-profit business or we're a nonprofit, it is likely that multiple people in a community setting share the same vision, right? We might share the same vision for the future, but the way we delineate ourselves in the nonprofit sector or in a for-profit system is, what is our unique contribution, right? What is it specifically that we are doing, the product we're producing, the outputs we are looking to achieve? Those sort of things are similar. So let's actually look at a few mission and vision statements. And to the last question that was asked, I will give you a hint that these are all for-profit companies. These are not nonprofits, but just as examples, this vision statement to be Earth's most customer-centric company, where customers can find and discover anything they might want to buy online. Again, you might see multiple companies within that vision statement, but when we get to the unique mission statement, it gets a little different. To offer our customers the lowest possible prices, the best selection, and the utmost convenience. Now there's only one answer to what this can be, right? You're probably already thinking it in your head, and you would be correct if you said Amazon. Another example, whose mission vision is it? The vision to provide access to the world's information in one click. Again, there could be and likely are multiple sort of entities that share that vision. But when we get specifically to organizing the world's information and making it universally accessible and useful, we have become familiar with a single company that we all use now as an adjective. Just Google it, right? But it's actually, that's their mission and vision from the company. One other example, a vision statement. We are on the face of the earth to make great products. I would hope and I would think that there are probably multiple organizations who would say as their vision statement, like, we're here to make great products. But this mission statement really brings it home to bring the best user experience to our customers through innovative hardware, software, and services. So the vision is about making great products, but the mission statement is about user experience. Again, if you've been following along and guessing, you might have come up here with Apple. Just some examples of how clear those mission and vision statements are and why it is so important for our organizations to have clear mission and vision statements. One extension of the mission and vision conversation is also related to core values and culture. You might often, in fact, hear these things referenced together, our mission, vision, and values, right? We talk about it with organizations many times as a cluster, mission, vision, values, things we must have, things we must all be working on together. By the way, when I look at just this slide, even with all the rest of the image covered up, I would say when we're working on a strategic plan with an organization, somewhere between 50 and 60% of our time and effort with that organization is focused just on what you can see right here. Mission, vision, values, upwards of 60% of the effort. And again, it is our interpretation of a strategic plan and our approach to strategic planning that the most important thing you can do is understand why your organization exists, your mission, vision, and values. That is the most important and where we spend 50 to 60% of our time with clients as we're working through. So what are values? Just really quickly, we're not going to spend a ton of time here, but adding to your mission and vision, making sure that a strategic planning process helps your organization clarify its core values. Now, I will say, while there could be slightly varying definitions, back to the last question about mission and vision, a core value is a core value is a core value, whether we're talking about an individual, a nonprofit, a for-profit, a faith-based institution, an education institution. Our core values are the fundamental beliefs of our organization. They define our culture. They are A-R-E, our, O-U-R, are our moral compass. Circumstances might change around us, but ideally our values do not. Think about this from the personal perspective. We don't show up in the world with one set of values on Monday and another set of values on Tuesday and another set of values on Wednesday. We might have more or less energy. We might be tired. We might be excited. We might show up differently in the world, but our core values, our moral compass are the same regardless. Core values express the integrity that individuals and organizations believe in. So again, if we go back to this slide, our why, all-inclusive, encompasses mission, vision, values. We spend, as I said, 50 to 60% of the strategic planning time on this, which is also why I've spent 50% or so of today's presentation on these topics. A really, really, really important part of the strategic planning process, and one that sometimes gets a little short-circuited because people want to jump right to the what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? And we are often pulling organizations back and saying, hang on, before we can answer the question, what should we do? We have to answer the question, why are we here? The follow-up to why are we here then is how are we going to do our work? Remember, if you think about the golden circle, why, how, what. So now this image is starting to get bigger. We go from our mission and vision into what we refer to as big bets and key strategies, big bets and key strategies. And again, you're still seeing, if you look down, the board is involved, leadership is involved. Now staff is starting to get more intentionally involved. These are the sort of things that are tied directly to your strategic plan. People always ask, and likely will ask today, should the plan be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? My answer is always yes, it should be. It should be whatever meets the needs of your organization. Although I will say, on the heels of a global pandemic, for any of us, especially in the nonprofit sector, to think that we can predict the future 5, 10 years from now in a strategic plan is a little complicated. And if I'm giving unsolicited advice, it's for nonprofit organizations to shorten our line of sight, shrink the horizon a little bit. Let's stick in that 3-year range. 3 to 5 probably is the high end, so that we can make sure we're constantly checking in with the needs of our community and our stakeholders as we're creating our path forward, how we are going to do our work. Speaking of checking in with our communities and our stakeholders, somebody did ask the question earlier, who should be involved in creating a strategic plan? I want to be clear here that the key I've put together in the colors that I've used here are what we normally see, but not what we would suggest. What we normally see is that leadership and staff and board are always involved. Sometimes we involve community partners, but almost never are we involving our funders, our influencers, decision makers, and almost never are we actually involving lived experts and the people we serve in the creation of a strategic plan. Let me say that again for emphasis, because some of you are probably thinking, oh, we did focus groups. We did listening sessions. We did a survey. We asked our population what they need. That is different from involving them in the creation of your strategic plan, right? We can gather information across this ecosystem, but have we really invited these people to the table to help us co-create solutions? What we see more often is that people survey our partners or do a listening session with lived experts, and then we come back to the orange circle and we say, thanks for that information, we'll take it from here. I'm not saying that's absolutely wrong. That's probably actually pretty standard nonprofit practice. But the organizations that have the best, most useful strategic plans are the ones that find a way to incorporate all of these layers of the ecosystem, not just in information collection, but in actual co-creation of strategic plans and in co-creation of the path forward. When we do that, it helps us understand big bets. And you saw this in the slide around how do we do our work? What is a big bet? From our definition, again, we've done the vision, we've done the mission, we've done the values. Now we're on to the big bets. Where do we as an organization want to make wise investments of time, talent, and treasure that will allow our organization to operate at its highest point of contribution? Where do we want to make wise investments of time, talent, and treasure that allow us to operate at our highest point of contribution? This is a critically important question, and one that you really can't answer as an organization without direct involvement from the populations you're serving, from your partners, yes, from your board and your staff, but some really inclusive process is going to give us much more precise, better, more thoughtful answers to this question. Where do we as an organization want to make wise investments of time, talent, and treasure that allow us to operate at our highest point of contribution? Another way to think about this comes from the work of Jim Collins. And some of you may be familiar with Collins' book, Good to Great. I don't love the entire book, but there are certainly parts of it that I use pretty regularly, and this is one. Collins suggests, and this is important for your organization, that if we want to build great organizations, not just good ones, great ones, we need to be able to do two things simultaneously. We need to be able to, number one, preserve our core. By the way, in order to preserve the core, we need to know the core, who we are and why we are here. That should sound familiar. In the first column of that strategic plan, when we said why, it was about preserving the core, our mission and vision statements. But that isn't the only thing we have to do. We also have to be able to stimulate progress. Understand as an organization that there are strategies and practices we are going to have to adapt. We are going to have to change. We are going to have to evolve in order to meet the needs of a changing world. So the suggestion here is we have to be able to do both of these things at the same time. Number one, understand why we're here and stay true to our mission and vision, not chasing shiny objects, while at the same time being willing to stimulate progress. This is the magic of a strategic plan. Is, if I go back to this image, which might make a little bit more sense now, clarify the core. Why are we here? And how do we want to stimulate progress? How do we want to create a path forward? How do we want to move forward? Being able to do both of those things in a strategic plan simultaneously, this is 95%, 96%, 97% of your strategic plan. Let me say that again. 95, 96, 97% of your strategic plan is right here. How do we clarify our core? What is our core? And how do we create a path forward? Now, some of you are thinking, but Forrest, we haven't even gotten to what we're going to do yet. Well, that's sort of intentional, but I'll go with you here. What we are going to do might be referred to as a key strategy or an activity. And that is sort of the final piece of the puzzle here, right? If we go all the way through on this image, what are we going to do? Why are we here? How do we want to work? And what are we going to do? Key strategies and activities. That comes only after we've done why and how. And organizations that I see fail in the strategic planning process jump right to what. What is it we're going to do? What is it we're going to do? What is it we're going to do? And don't answer the question why and how. For what it's worth, being disciplined and deliberate about answering the question why and how also helps the board and helps the staff understand the overall effort and energy of the organization, ultimately helps them understand the strategic plan and helps them figure out how they can contribute to the solutions. When we get too down in the weeds of what and what are the activities are going to be, it gives people an out to say, oh, I'm not going to do that. Forrest is going to work on that. Or I'm not going to do that. Ellen's going to take care of that. What we really want to do is zoom out and give the whole organization, all the staff, all the board, a reason to buy in, a reason to believe. And that is why we focus on why and how. After those pieces are done, absolutely, we move into what. What are the activities? What are the key strategies? How are we going to hold ourselves accountable? And those are the sort of things we might do every year to update ourselves, right? Have an annual work plan. That probably sounds familiar to you, but that is different from a strategic planning process that clarifies the core and creates the path forward. By the way, for those of you who are board members, look down here on this image. Very intentionally, the board arrow stops right around key strategies. And this is important. So the board has been at the table and involved in the mission, the vision, the big bets, the wise investments of time, talent, and treasure, why and how we are here. But when it comes to what are we going to do, that is where good boards recognize it's time for them to tap out, step back, turn this effort over to staff and leadership to say, okay, we've given you the why and the how. Now you, staff, as experts in this area, tell us what we are going to do as an organization, right? So again, think about this as a sequence, as a framework, call it a template if you want. Start with why, how. That is where the board is most involved. Then the board steps back and lets the staff step in to tell us what we are going to do. We've established why, we've established how. Now we're talking about what. And when we get to what, this is also where we ramp up our accountability, right? This could be a whole nother segment in and of itself, but as we're talking about key strategies and activities, we're also talking about holding ourselves accountable. how are we going to measure these things? What are the objectives? What are the metrics that we're going to follow and we're going to pay attention to as we move forward? And that is where, again, there's some joint accountability across the board and the staff within an organization. This is, once this process is complete, we use to update our board agendas. We use to update our board recruitment. We use to understand if we have the right people on the bus and have the right team in place. And all of these parts of the strategic plan collectively help hold us accountable. Let me take just a little bit of a breath here. This is how you can reach me. That's email and office phone and Twitter or X or whatever it's called, and also LinkedIn for those of you that play around on any of those social sites. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to stay in touch. Again, this is just sort of our approach to this conversation, but I hope it was helpful. I know that there has to be some closeout conversation at some point, but I've also left, I don't know, 5-10 minutes here for questions. John or whomever was looking at the Q&A, if there are any you want to call out, I'll do my best to try to answer them.
Hi, Forrest. Okay, the one question is changing the mission and or vision statements a normal part of the process as the nonprofit grows?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's an important question. I talked about this just a little bit earlier. As a general rule, our mission and vision statements should stay pretty constant. Right. That said, and I did mention as part of a strategic planning process, if we're coming in as consultants, we'll quite often sort of kick the tires, right, and make sure that a mission and vision is up to date. We do want to make sure that our organization isn't just static and stale, right? That we're continuing to meet the evolving needs. We mentioned that. But if we're really crafting a long-term vision for the future, that vision should stand the test of time. And we hope that it does. And certainly our mission statement is why the organization was founded and our unique purpose. You don't want to see an organization that like used to do this, now they do this, now they do this next thing, now they do this next thing. So evolving vision and mission statements to be more precise and accurate seems logical. Constantly changing them tells me an organization has lost their way and is just chasing the next big thing. So hopefully that makes sense. A good question.
Another question is, where do KPIs fit into this model?
Yeah, that's also another good question. And I would say right at the end where we're talking about key strategies and activities, it's an important part of strategic plans, right? For-profit organizations and nonprofit organizations. I sometimes though refer to, and I will admit this is a blind spot for me, I sometimes refer to the measurement mud. We really push organizations to get most of the way through the process before we get dragged down in KPIs and smart objectives. And I've seen a lot of board meetings and a lot of strategic planning retreats go sideways and like halt progress because we got in an argument about, is this a smart objective? Is it measurable? Is it realistic? Is this a KPI? Is it a big enough BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal? Like, right. And we get lost in the measurement mud. The reality is many, probably most nonprofits don't have enough of a sophisticated data tracking mechanism to keep up with all the KPIs they create. And again, I'm admitting my blind spot here, but it really hurts my heart when I see organizations spend weeks and weeks and weeks and months coming up with the perfectly written KPI and then realize, wait, we don't have the software or the manpower or the capability to track these things. What's more important in a strategic plan, in my opinion, again, is the compass function. Is it putting us in the right direction? KPIs can certainly play a role in our work plans and our annual plans and our activities. At the same time, I am very well aware of the counter argument here that if we don't measure things, that doesn't matter, right? And we can only know if we're succeeding if we measure things. I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just suggesting to all of you who are listening, be realistic, not just about the creation of the measures themselves and what we're trying to do, but do we as an organization have the capability, the resources, the time, the manpower to actually track all of the measures we just created? Because the worst case scenario is, again, as I said, you spend months and months and months creating metrics. that 6 months from now, we don't have any data to even know if we met the metric. I'm much more interested in making sure that the strategic plan pushes us all in the same direction. I take some heat for that answer, and I get it. But that is sort of where I stand on that piece.
I have another question. Is there a more specific template that you can suggest to help jumpstart a draft of the strategic plan?
Yeah, another good question. I mean, again, I realize it's sort of 30,000 feet, right? But we really do use this why, how, what sequence as part of a template. There are certainly worksheets and models and exercises that we encourage organizations to do along the way. I'm not the best person to answer this question because I've sort of gotten out of the quote unquote template business. Although I recognize that depending on the scope, size, sophistication of nonprofits, they can be helpful. But we really want strategic planning to be an interactive and iterative process where organizations, like I said before, are thinking and acting more strategically, not just going through a template and filling out boxes or filling out questions. Although probably fair to say that, again, depending on scope and size of the organization, those sort of things can be helpful. If I can identify one or two, I'll drop them into the slide deck before this gets shared. I know somebody else asked if we can make the deck available. And before we send it out, let me see if I can find a link or two to a template that might be helpful. John, I think that might be it. Do I need to put the slides back up for you to do some closing?
Yes, I would, but I do have one additional question,
Great.
and that would be there's a business plan, and then there's the strategic plan. Could you please explain the difference for people?
Yeah, again, all of these things are functionally and fundamentally different, right? Our strategic plan, our business plan, our action plans, or our work plans. A lot of times in the nonprofit sector, you find all of these things getting jumbled together as one big thing. But again, if the strategic plan is talking about why we are here and how we do our work, if the strategic plan is our compass, right? And the work plan is our GPS. If you'll allow me to sort of abuse this directional analogy, if the strategic plan is our compass, the work plan is our GPS, the business plan is how we're going to put gas in the car, right? At some point, we also have to understand what is the financial model of organizations, what is our business model, quote unquote. And as a nonprofit, you might say, well, we don't really have a business plan or business model, but you still need to understand the financial mechanisms, right? How the organization is funded, where and how we can attract grants, philanthropists, donors, funders, right? What is that model going to be? And quite frankly, and this goes all the way back to the Menti poll at the beginning, having a good strategic plan and having a good sense of why your organization exists is one of the best mechanisms you have as a nonprofit for generating buzz, generating interest, and also ultimately then generating revenue and finances to power the organization. I have a colleague that is fond of saying, no money, no mission, right? So we need to have a mission statement, yes, but we also need to have a business plan and a financial model to power this thing. Said another way, it doesn't do us much good to have a compass and a GPS if we don't have a vehicle to get us from point A to point B.
And one last question: when do you bring in the benefactors and funders to the table?
Again, a good question. I mean, we see and have seen opportunities for them to participate at all different levels of this conversation. I think what I would encourage you to do as organizations is pose that question to them, right? Especially to philanthropists, funders, foundations, to be able to say and be public about our organization is going through a strategic planning process. Would you like to have input? Would you like to participate? I can tell you that not every funder and not every donor, will say yes, but those who do say yes are genuinely grateful for the opportunity to at least have input. Now, what I want to be careful of is not letting benefactors and funders sort of steer us too much, right? We still need to make sure our organization's leadership and board, again, stays grounded in who we are. But gathering that input from benefactors, philanthropists, funders, donors is certainly important. And what I would encourage you to do, as opposed to having a single answer, is ask them that question. Again, we are getting ready to go through a strategic planning process. We value your opinion. We value your presence at the table in this conversation. How, when, where would you like to be involved? And we would welcome that partnership and that involvement. It's a very meaningful conversation for donors.
All right, and that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, Forrest. We appreciate your time and
Thank you.
effort they put forward.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, our pleasure. And to remind everyone, we do have an annual nonprofit workshop series ongoing. They're held on Tuesdays from noon to 1. Our next series is on volunteer management, and that's scheduled for October 1st. We also have one on October 8th for board management, October 15th and 15th for marketing for nonprofits. October 22nd would be the compliance, financial, and red flags topic. And October 29th is grant writing. Let's see, can you move this to the next? Yeah, so we also have the ESSER agency provides a webinar series in partnership with South Carolina SCORE Low Country to talk about the series of evolution in social media and marketing to help your businesses succeed. The next seminar would be November 5th, Marketing Evolution, Old Platforms, and New Strategies. Again, all sessions are on Tuesdays from 12 to 1 p.m., open to all, complimentary via Zoom. Could you move to the next slide? Thanks. And if you haven't thought about it, consider being part of SCORE. We are one of the largest networks of volunteer business network mentors with over 10,000 volunteers in 226 chapters. We come in a variety of roles. We have business mentors, workshop presenters and moderators, social media expertise. We have graphic designers and other behind-the-scenes support, such as subject matter experts and administrative staff support. Everyone has a talent that they can offer, where it would be welcome with SCORE to be able to help others that are trying to succeed in business. So consider becoming a volunteer with SCORE, and just visit score.org/South Carolina Low Country. And follow us on various social media platforms such as Facebook, X, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. And I think that's it. And finally, thank you to Coastal States Bank. They're our series sponsor. And the last one, we are funded by the Small Business Administration. All opinions, conclusions, and/or recommendations expressed herein are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the SBA. However, we certainly appreciate the fact that they do make SCORE possible, and our efforts to help you possible. Thank you once again for attending, and hope to see you at the next seminar.